rolling.
All right. And then you can take me to 0 on that whenever, right?
Yeah, I'll give you the countdowns.
Okay.
And then once you're live, I'll give you like the normal go. You're live, like on camera.
All right. Well, she'll tell me that too. All right, Jen, you can go ahead and do the outbound.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just sending it right to your computer.
Yep.
So you should see that. Let me know if you don't. Thank you, sir.
I've not gotten it. Oh, there we go.
Okay, perfect.
Starting dial.
All right, wonderful, sir. Are you okay for me to still do a verbal countdown? I was just
Sure.
listening in the background for your live.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt.
No,
Okay.
you just do your normal thing. And
Okay, perfect. I was going to say I could count you down in the chat if that's easier if you're already live, but...
no, we're not. Our congressional office in Washington, D.C. We want to give you the best information about what's going on in the House of Representatives and throughout the country. But there is so much right now that I need to give you an update on, from Title 42 at the border, a new piece of legislation that just this past week came out of the House of Representatives on domestic extremism that I think is really going to target a lot of Northwest Floridians, especially the military. I want to get to that. Economic concerns, the latest in Ukraine, a massive surrender of U.S. sovereignty to the World Health Organization. The decision the Biden administration is making there. Hit *3 if you want to talk about that or any other matter. But first, of course, we start in Uvalde, Texas, where a tragic event has resulted in a senseless loss of life and inspired, seems, by pure evil. And as we're going through that devastation and just wishing that there was any extension of our empathy or love to the people affected by this that would give them any sense of comfort in an unimaginably difficult time, of course, we see already today United States Senator Chris Murphy taking to the floor of the United States Senate to call for more gun control. And while there is nothing that we wouldn't give of our hearts, of our care and comfort to those who are in pain now, it is my belief as the congressman for Northwest Florida that gun control is not an effective tool to stop these school shootings. I wish it were. I wish there were anything that would be a magic answer to something of such depravity. But the gun control legislation that was being called for on the floor of the Senate right now by Senator Chris Murphy, background checks, waiting periods. There's no evidence. We don't even know if this particular shooter would have passed a background check. Increasingly, more and more, there are people who would pass background checks that then end up committing these acts of violence. But I also know this. I remember from the Parkland shooting in Florida that usually there's somebody who said something, who's observed bad behavior, who's made a report. In the case of the Parkland shooter, you had a report that was made to the FBI, and the FBI sat on that. You also had circumstances in Buffalo where there were prior law enforcement encounters with this particular shooter. Again, you're joining me, Congressman Matt Gaetz, on our town hall meeting over the phone, online. Hit *3 with any thoughts. But I want to get your perspective on this issue because we are certain to now encounter it when we return to Washington. If you believe gun control is an effective strategy to prevent school shootings, press 1 now on your touchtone phone. If you do not believe gun control is an effective strategy to prevent school shootings, press 2. If you're unsure or would like to think more about it before giving an answer, you can press 3 to log that, and we'll get to those responses. But before we do that, I'm going to go to Brian in Gulf Breeze. Brian, thanks so much for joining us on the town hall meeting. What's your perspective?
Yes, sir. Regarding the World Health Organization treaty, or so-called treaty, the World Health Organization is a non-governmental organization. If I didn't fail civics class, and I don't think I did, how can the United States enter a treaty with an entity that is not a sovereign state?
No, it's totally illegal. It's totally wrong. It is a surrender of sovereignty, and frankly, I don't even know if it would uphold a review of its legality for the reason you just stated. But my concern, and I think this is what the American people need to wake up to, the agreement, whatever you call it, compact, treaty with the World Health Organization, is not about the coronavirus pandemic. It is about giving a foreign entity, not a state actor, control over Americans for whatever they think is the next pandemic. What if they say gun violence is the next pandemic?
It's more.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's more than that. It's more than that. It's not just the World Health Organization having power. It's also about giving more power to the federal government and away from the people.
Yes. Well, not even the federal government. Not even a foreign government, as you point out, a globalist bureaucratic entity that would somehow then have powers to restrict rights, liberties, and freedoms of Americans. It is what, like, literally the type of stuff we fought wars against a king abroad to preserve our liberty. Now they're expecting us to surrender our sovereignty to the World Health Organization. But it is not about health. It is about control. It's going to be about control over guns. What if they say climate change is the next pandemic? Are we going to surrender our energy policy to some entity overseas? So it's one of the really important reasons.
They already have.
Well, they've tried.
They already have.
Well, Trump pulled us out of that Paris Climate Accord, and I just think that's sickening to me. It is totally sickening, and it's one of the urgent reasons I want to have this call. For those who are on the call, you've got the Biden administration doing everything they can to give the World Health Organization the authority and the power to dramatically impact American life. Brian, I'll give you the last word. What you've researched that you think Northwest Floridians need to know about this.
Basically, this is just the next doggone thing. And we as citizens need to stand up. We need to call our representatives, all of them, Scott and Rubio and Mr. Biden, as dilapidated as he may be. We need to call all of them. We need to let our opinions be known. Because if we're sitting here quiet, nothing happens.
Amen. Well, hey, thanks so much for participating. Thank you for giving me your feedback, and thanks for being well informed. That is the best resilience for a strong citizenry. If you're just joining us, this is Congressman Matt Gaetz. You're participating in our live telephone town hall meeting. We're talking about the World Health Organization, and we were before that talking about really the push for gun control that we were seeing today on the floor of the United States Senate. And in response to our poll, 17% of you believe that gun control would be an effective strategy preventing school shootings. 75% of you do not. 8% unsure. So overwhelmingly, the group does not believe that gun control is going to be an effective strategy when dealing with these tragic events. And that doesn't make them any less tragic, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing everything possible not to create another generation of sociopaths that bring this kind of just hate and evil into any community. We had another point on Second Amendment and gun rights. Scott from Pensacola, go right ahead, and then we'll get back to the WHO.
Yeah, well, you have this shooting out in Texas, at the high school, and I'm all for open carry, and that state is open carry, but I just, the question before about the WHO and everything and getting control, we need open carry in as many states as we possibly can for control in our pocket. And for the next crazy that comes out and starts shooting out people. So I was just wondering if we could ever get an open carry like these other states have gotten, like Texas and I think Alabama.
Yeah, Scott, I was the sponsor of the bill to do open carry in the state of Florida in the Florida legislature. We got that bill passed out of the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, even not all the Republicans in the Florida Senate would support open carry, so we didn't get it passed. I believe that these things are best done at the state level because I don't want Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer negotiating my Second Amendment rights. Frankly, they're constitutional rights, and they're not really subject to the government's restriction, in my view. But I'm a big believer in open carry, and I think that this is what a lot of gun owners get wrong. We're always so concerned about what the government's going to do to take our rights away. We don't do everything to vindicate our rights. And I think an open carry push along with concealed carry reciprocity. If another state has concealed carry, if you're driving from Pensacola to Mobile, if you're driving, from Crestview to Dothan, Alabama, do you really need a different license structure? What's your perspective on that? I'll give you the last word.
I think that you should be able to just go right on through to the other state, for sure. I'm with you on that.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for giving me your perspective. I appreciate it. This is Congressman Matt Gaetz. We've now got thousands of folks participating in our telephone town hall meeting. Hit *3 if you want to give me your perspective on one of the matters that we're discussing, or really any other matter that you've got your mind on. One of the urgent reasons I wanted to have this report for all of you, the Biden administration doing everything possible to give authority to the World Health Organization under a globalist agreement to deem things pandemics, and then to have control measures put in place over the American people. If you support the Biden agreement with the World Health Organization, I want you to press 1 now on your telephone. If you oppose that Biden agreement with the World Health Organization, press 2. If you're unsure or need more information, press 3. We're going to get to that in just a moment. we have a question from Kathleen in the meantime. Kathleen, go right ahead.
Hi, I am calling today as a Northwest Florida concerned mother. If you believe that gun reform is not going to be able to stop school shootings like this, which I think it will be a mixture of items. However, gun reform does need to happen. How do you think, if that was not done, how do you believe that we could stop a school shooting like this? We're mothers, we're tired, we're weeping.
Well, here's what we've done in Florida and what I believe in. One, stronger physical plants around these schools. In Northwest Florida in particular, we have a lot of open ramp schools. And so years ago after Parkland, we made massive investments in fencing, in walls, in better door systems, where really you don't leave the school as soft of a target as it is in some places. Second thing I think you need to do is ensure that teachers who are appropriately equipped and skilled are able to carry. I think that right now, maintaining schools as gun-free zones leaves them vulnerable as soft targets. We got a lot of former military that volunteer in our schools that are very capable of providing a force multiplier. And I think if we did that, we'd make these things less likely. Also, I think that you have to have like good learning policies that have the students a little more empathetic. Like I worry right now that we are, with masking and mandates, like not allowing students to be able to see how their actions cause harm or pain to others. And I think that just makes us all a little less human. But you're my constituent, I'll give you the last word.
Okay, so basically you're speaking about bullying at the end. Fences aren't going to stop anything. People can walk into my children's school right now. They're in a preschool. This is just, it's become an issue more for mental health, more for, and I can tell you as a white woman, it's very difficult to get psychiatric care in our area. And I'm a white, middle-income family. I can tell you that so many people are missing out on these things. Do you not believe that mental health care should play a part in this?
I do. I think that we work, very frequently, frankly, with a lot of veterans on access to care and having sufficient provider networks.
I'm talking about the general population.
Yeah, no, I think everybody. But I think in what I can tell you is, as the congressman for Northwest Florida, we see some of the highest acuity with people who have had prior military service, and that unlocks certain benefits that we typically try to align. But look, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I know that 17% of the folks on the call think that we need more gun control. That's just not a position I hold. But thanks for sharing it nonetheless.
I just hope in our area. That would be great.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for participating. See, not everyone agrees, but it was, at least on this call, a pretty small minority. But even when you're in the minority, you have the right to share your perspective. On the World Health Organization, a whopping 5% of you support the Biden agreement with the World Health Organization. 88% of you oppose that agreement. 7% are unsure and would require more information. Got an interesting perspective on global food supply from Jeannie in Pensacola. Jeannie, go right ahead with your question or comment.
Hey, man. Yeah, it's just something a lot of people didn't know about, that our world is going to be out of wheat in 10 weeks because of the Ukraine-Russian, civil war. What exactly is our government going to do? Because we've got an open border and we've got millions of people coming into our country, and I'm hardcore about American first. You know that, Matt.
Yep.
I'm hardcore, and I want to know why aren't we growing our own weed? Why aren't we supplying our own weed in our own country? Why aren't we building back America like Trump had it? So that's my concern. Back on that, the gun control thing real quick. We have a mental health issue in our country, and my son is one of them that has mental health issues, and he's also ex-military. The mental health issue, I agree, it needs to be taken care of. But a lot of these guns that are on the streets and a lot of the shootings and deaths are done by people who are criminals. And they didn't. I just want all these moms and everybody to understand that it's mental health and criminals that are doing all these killings. not a sane person's going to go into a school and kill people. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I think that's an area of agreement. I think you agree with while you might disagree with our prior caller on gun control, it seems like there's broad agreement on the fact that the people that do this stuff are freaking nuts. And they probably, and there is a mental health feature of it. But look, I want to get to the point you made initially about the shortage of food. This is a major issue that not a lot of people are talking about. I have a podcast called Firebrand. You folks can go back and check out the episode I did with Shannon Nixon of Nixon Farms right here in Northwest Florida. And here is the synopsis. There is a war on the American farmer that is going on right now. And it is coming from radical environmentalism. It is coming from being very short-sighted about some of these tariffs and sanctions and how they hurt our ability to be able to get what we need to have effective agriculture. And the supply chain issues, just, the ability that when you can't get a part for weeks, you can miss a planting season, or you can be far less efficient in a harvest. And, that is a huge thing that not a lot of people are talking about. And if your question is, what are we doing about it? The answer is not enough. In Congress, I'm having to get reports about governments that might fall in Africa and South America because of food shortage. And I think about what the impact's going to be for fellow Americans. So people need to see that this is a major, major problem. And right now, this administration is not reinforcing the supply chain and the ability to have a bounty in America of what we need to be prosperous. And I'm glad you brought it up. It's a very serious issue. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, that was just the only thing I just wanted to know. It's like, we can try to stockpile as much as we want, but I've got friends and family and grandchildren I'm concerned about. And I just want to know what somebody's going to do about the southern border, because we won't even be able to feed our own people, let alone the rest of the world. And I know, Matt, that you are busting your butt, and trying to help, but we need more Matt Gaetz out there. We need more Marjories. It's frustrating. I told you in person before, we can't last very much longer.
Well, I appreciate you. We're fighting for you, and you know what? It's a great country. It's still worth fighting for with all we got, and it's not like these are unsolvable problems. You made a point at the beginning of your question about how America was focused on productivity and success for our people when Donald Trump was president.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for participating. If you're watching us live, leave us a comment. Getter, Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube. Here we got at Black Guns 2049 on Getter. Says school boards are more focused on pushing critical race theory than security. It's quite the observation. Here's what I would say. Focusing on security makes a huge difference. I know that our prior caller said, look, these schools are vulnerable no matter what we do. I can tell you, as someone who goes on campus quite a bit, man, increasingly you got to show that ID. You got to get through a buzzed through reinforced door. And I think that that's probably a very good thing, very productive, very helpful. Now, Jeannie raised the issue of our southern border, and this is something that we've got to talk about. You hear about Title 42 on the news. Now, Title 42 was a Trump-era public health authority that said due to the pandemic, we had the authority to return people immediately and not have them waiting in our country, distributed throughout our country, potentially spreading disease. You are not having full testing. You are not having full, accountability over this virus or, frankly, anything else at the southern border. And so you've seen in the news a judge has told the Biden administration that they cannot repeal Title 42. Do not take that as something of comfort. Here's why. All the reports that we are getting from the border tell us that they have functionally gotten rid of Title 42 already. That the people that are managing these critical sectors and vectors on the border are already trying to get ahead of the wave that they know is coming with Title 42 going away, and they're just letting them in. It is like a total turnstile on the southern border. Even if you saw the report about how ISIS was planning a potential assassination of former President George W. Bush, they were viewing our southern border as the principal vulnerability to get terrorists, murderers, assassins into our country. A horrible, horrible thing. I think I know where everybody's going to be on this issue, but I want to get your perspective because, frankly, I like telling the other members of Congress what my constituents are saying. If you think we ought to keep Title 42 in place, which allows us to deport people, press 1 now. If you think we should get rid of Title 42, which would mean that people could come into the country in the absence of that public health restriction, press 2. If you're unsure, press 3. Keep Title 42, which allows you to deport people. 1, get rid of it. Those people come in. That's number 2. Unsure, number 3. And let's see, we've got a question. We got George from Pace while everybody is voting. Go right ahead, George.
Yes, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that critical race theory. I'm on the vetting committee for the local executive committee trying to vet these school board candidates. We got one who plasters conservative all over her advertisements. And then she voted for the last curriculum a time or two back, and she admitted right on tape that she never looked at it.
What's the worst curriculum you found, George, in your review? What's the worst curriculum you found in our schools?
That's the problem. I've been emailing, I've been trying. They will not let me in the Dillon Center. It seems like they keep avoiding me to let me in to see these stuff. I've talked to some other people that did get in, and they claim it's like trying to get into a fortress. They don't want us seeing the curriculum. There is a lady named Debbie down in Uvalde. She's been in front of the school board several times. She's come up with stuff that she's gotten from parents where the kids are giving it to the parents give it to her. And, of course, they use the thing like equity all the time, and they preach the typical stuff. I've talked to some of the school board members. The problem is if it's not labeled CRT on the outside of the cover, they don't look inside. As long as it's not labeled.
Well, that's
CRT,
not how it goes. That CRT, for those listening who might not have delved into this issue as deeply as George has, and by the way, I appreciate your willingness to be interested in the curriculum because I think that's how the left poisons people. I really do. I think they poison it by having taken over large swaths of public education. Maybe not in Northwest Florida, but in a lot of places. So what a lot of this stuff, it's not going to say critical race theory on it, but it is going to push the theory that we don't judge people by the content of their character anymore. We judge them by their skin color. And I unequivocally, categorically oppose that. I believe in Martin Luther King's vision for America, where we look at what's on the inside. And we don't say that because you're white, you have to be an oppressor. Because you're not white, you're inherently oppressed. That's nonsense. That goes against the American experience. And anything that kind of feeds into that is what I think we're talking about in terms of critical race theory. When I was in the state legislature, I passed a bill that said that any school district could opt out of the Tallahassee state-approved reading list and could have their own curriculum. And that was a way to require our school boards to be personally accountable for that. Not to say, well, it was approved by the state or it was approved by the Secretary of Education. No. When you get elected to the school board in the state of Florida, you are accountable for that curriculum. And, you have a right to see it as a member of the community. And, I have not seen the vast departure from American values in Northwest Florida schools like I've seen it in other places, but there is still stuff around here that I found concerning. George, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I'm going to try harder, try to get in there and look at it. We need to watch the curriculum. It just gets more liberal. I noticed it even when I was in school. It seems like every year, let's just see how far we can go with this stuff, and I won't even start in with the whole trans thing and the strange sexuality stuff.
I didn't even know if my teachers were married. Okay, and now teachers want to talk about their sexuality with their students. It's the weirdest thing. I mean, that stuff should be dealt with at home, in church. That is, the American taxpayer is not funding the classroom day so that teachers can show up and talk about their sexuality with their students. I mean, I can't even believe I have to say that out loud. It's so obvious, but I think a lot of taxpayers probably resent the hell out of it.
Well, thanks for the chance.
All right, thank you, George. Thanks for
Thank you.
participating. Thank you. Look, we need engaged citizenry right now. What I love about George's call is that's somebody getting involved, looking at what the school board decisions are, seeing how that's reflected in curriculum. We need more of that. It's the way we're going to save the country. I want to get back to our poll on Title 42. Not surprisingly, 92% of you, 92% support keeping Title 42 in place, even though the Biden administration wants to get rid of it. 4% want to get rid of it, agree with the Biden administration. Another 4% undecided. So look, very, very one-sided response on that. It's also why I think that we frankly have the circumstance we do with our border being overrun. Let's see. Let's go to Marlene in Gulf Breeze. Marlene, what's your question or comment? Hello? Marlene? Are you with us? Well, I have the question written down, so maybe I won't be able to go here, but she asked the question, do we believe metal detectors at schools would help reduce school shootings? And you know what? I'm open-minded about that. Actually, that would be a good question for everybody. Metal detectors, would they be something that would deter potential shooters? Would they make our schools, look too much like prisons? I'm going to put that to the group. If you think that metal detectors would be an effective strategy at deterring school shootings, press 1 now. If you don't think metal detectors would be an effective strategy, press 2. And if you're unsure, press 3, and we'll go back to that. Let's see. Lynn, an FPL issue. Go right ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you acknowledging my existence. My question relates to what have you done personally to work on our problem as it relates to FL and their outrageous rate increase for Northwest Florida / power grid up here?
Well, let me tell you first, I wish I could do more, but the Florida Constitution vests that authority with the Public Service Commission. And they have the exclusive authority, regardless of what the governor or the legislature or the United States Congress say, to set rates. So what I've done is to make sure that they know where we stand is we have assembled all of the complaints that our office has gotten, and we've gotten hundreds of them, and we have submitted them with our request that they roll back the rate increases that they've approved and that they not approve further rate increases going forward. Now, they have not exactly adhered to that demand, and they're under no legal obligation to do so, but don't think that these rate increases are happening in Florida absent what Joe Biden is doing and getting us back into the Paris Climate Accord. And I totally oppose the Paris Climate Accord, but when he does that and he reverses President Trump pulling us out of that, then you gaslight all of these power companies like FP&L to shift the burden of their capital investment, of their upfront costs, onto ratepayers today. And that is what is fundamentally unfair about this. They want today's ratepayers to pay for all this capital investment for solar farms that they as a company are going to make more profit off of, for 10, 20, 50 years. So the reality is they're multi-billion-dollar companies. They ought to be funding that capital investment up front, not ratepayers. I'll give you the last word.
They certainly should. I've been in this business too long I was in the energy business for 30 years, in the nuclear energy business in the state of Florida. I worked in the plant here at Westinghouse for over 30 years. And before I asked the question, I had written a letter a few weeks ago to the governor relating to this question.
Good.
And prior to writing it, I had contacted our Public Service Commission, my county commissioner, your office, local lawyers, Levin, Palmatinia, and Rafferty, whole string of folks before I even wrote the letter. And I was just needing to hear somebody say, we're going to get this thing turned around. Plus, I've heard from the Public Service Commission, Gary Clark down there, all those guys that are appointed to that job, they're all appointed by previous governors. They all have their self-interest along the way over the years. And I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that there's too much bias Plus, I've heard from two of the governors from the council down there, two of the lawyers, and their comments on the issue, and I ain't getting a good reason for why those rates got raised yet, other than the fact.
Well, you're
that
paying
it's
for
okay
those solar
to do
farms.
one more.
That's what you're paying for. When you drive by those solar farms that you look out and see off I-10, you're paying for those. Even though that's going
right, we are, and
that's going to create profit for the company, but no lower rates for you down the road. That's what's unfair.
I know that. And I know that, and we're getting like the third one up here now. They're almost in my backyard now, you know, and my rate just jumped up, straight up from 1 month to the next. And I had not used any more than I did last March than this March. And it's just unfair. I'm still waiting for the governor to send me a response on this question. And I really tried to get somebody's attention. That's the most I could do. You know, I contacted everybody that matters. I couldn't talk to you directly, but I did talk to your office.
You're talking to me directly now. So look, here's what I'll say about the governor. Here's what I'll say about the governor. When he was first elected, and the water management districts down in South Florida were letting the sugar companies do whatever they wanted to do and pollute the water and hurt the people. Well, he fired every one of them in his first week. And so maybe what he needs to do is look at firing some of these public service commissioners if they continue to approve unfair rates. So he can't force them to make a decision on rates, but he can fire them if he thinks they're not doing their constitutional duty. And it might have to come to that.
Well, one response I got from one of the lawyers in the public council down there, her name was Kristen somebody or Christina somebody, I have it written down, but one response I got from her is she said she stood in front of the Public Service Commission was that one thing she repeated more and more to me, and I was talked to her for over 30 minutes on the phone here in my residence, was she kept using reference to the feds. Well, the feds wouldn't do this, the feds wouldn't do that. It was almost like she's being told what to approve down there, and what to go along with.
I hear you.
That just irks me. That irks me. An older lawyer in that office did contact me about a week later, and it's almost like he was apologizing for her. He didn't say that. But I think you understood where I was coming from. And these folks up here in the old Gulf Power Grid, those folks are wonderful. They're trying to do their job. It's all changed over on them overnight because of the way this thing was done. And I happen to know a lot of history about what happened as it relates to Southern Company and the purchase of Florida Power and Light, and then and Gulf Power.
Yeah, it hadn't resulted in better service or better rates for us. But hey, I gotta hop to another call. But thank you, Lynn. I appreciate you. All right.
Thank you very much, Matt. Keep swinging, brother.
All right, and we got a lot of folks in the queue right now. Press *3 if you've got a question or comment. And frankly, a lot of people who've brought up this Gulf Power issue. Richard and Milton, I see that you had basically the same question or concern. On Getter, at Mike Long, saying hire veterans to protect our schools. Well, really, hiring more security, creating more of a law enforcement presence at the schools actually does help. We've seen that. We've seen that in Florida, and in a lot of our sheriff's offices and in a lot of our police units, you have veteran preference, and a lot of veterans end up going into law enforcement in Northwest Florida. So in a way, if you probably go see a lot of the SROs in our communities, that's probably what you're getting. But you heard my debate and discussion with one of the other callers who said, the answer is not more protection at the schools. The answer is more gun control. That's not my perspective. Thomas from Pensacola, you wanted to weigh in on the subject. Go right ahead. Thomas, you with us?
Hello.
Yeah, go right ahead with your question or comment. I'm good.
I'm good. Hey, Matt, I appreciate your stance, and I appreciate you just being there against all the negativism we have in Congress and in the White House, and they're going to be against you because you believe in what this country was set upon and put upon, and that's Judeo-Christianity. And the reason that they're after President Trump is because he does too. He believes in the right thing. And I don't believe in gun control as much as criminal control. When the criminals use guns to go ahead and get their way as far as the unlawfulness, they should be held accountable, and it should be held up in front of the public eye, and every right should be given them. And once their rights are gone, as far as coming up against whatever the courts come up against them, it needs to be swift, and it needs to be harmful, that these people know that they're going to get.
Well, they deserve the worst. They deserve the death penalty, in my opinion. If they go, somebody to go kill 14 little students at an elementary school, they're the worst of the worst. But
Look at that.
I mean, I don't. Why do you think they do it? I mean, what would be in the mind of someone so sick they'd want to take the innocent life like that? It's just the worst.
It started when we took God out of the schools, and when we took God out of our government, and there's no respect there anymore.
So you think the more we dehumanize ourselves by moving away from the Lord, the more we invite violence. You know what? There's a lot of scripture about that.
That's right, and we're reaping the whirlwind.
Yep.
And so,
Oh, it's so sad. It's so sad.
It is, and when the fathers cannot raise their children or will not raise their children, and we're not holding them to account, well, then we're asking for it again. And I'm not a male chauvinist or anything else of that nature. White chauvinist, I'm not. I don't care what color.
Amen.
They could be purple and pink and green and polka dotted. I don't care. It should be the same thing for all of us. And
that's what America's about. That's what America's about, is that we don't restrict you based on your color, and we believe anybody can be anything. Well, I appreciate that. That was yes, sir. Go right ahead.
I've done all this in a wheelchair, and I retired from DFAS, and then I retired again with being 65. But they put my work before federal and my work after federal for me to get my second retirement, and that's the only thing that's helped me through. But I've raised a family in a wheelchair, so if I can do it, and in fact, DC asked me if I could fly, because they was going to get ready to fly me all over America. I said, you give me a couple of wings, I'll teach this wheelchair how to fly.
Oh man, well hey, I appreciate it. And that's something, that you raised a family in a wheelchair. My mother did the same thing. My mother's been in a wheelchair since I was 3 years old. And you know what? God never gives us more than we can handle, right? And sometimes you got to carry the thorn. Amen. Well, hey,
I'm the one that gave your grandmother her white mega hat.
Oh Lord.
And, she had a whole bunch of red ones, and so she traded me a red one for a white one, because I had a white one.
Oh Lord. Well, thank you for joining us. Thomas is speaking there about my 88-year-old grandmother who still makes it out to MAGA events. I love her so much. I'm glad you were able to do a little hat swap with her, and that was a very prescient call. Thank you to everyone right now who's watching live on our streaming platforms. We got a comment from @SunshineIrv on Rumble. How can we be concerned about a border thousands of miles away when we don't take care of our own border? Thank you, SunshineIrv. This is one of the reasons I have voted against this $40 billion in aid to Ukraine, because you have the Biden administration only requesting $15.3 billion for our own border. And yet they want to send $40 billion to Ukraine in cash to hold up their government, in military assistance. And for the United States of America, it hasn't always turned out perfectly when we have run corrupt countries awash in U.S. cash and U.S. weapons. We have Afghanistan to look at as an example where that didn't exactly turn out the way some people thought. But I want to get everyone on the call's perspective on this issue of Ukraine. First I got to give you the metal detectors answer. 71% said metal detectors would be effective. 21% said that they would not be effective. So actually very strong support for what the state of Florida did on this issue of physical security for our schools. Could be a lesson to other communities that are struggling and hurting right now, and our hearts certainly go out to them. That takes us to Ukraine. It takes us to the question that we just got on Rumble. If you support the Biden $40 billion Ukraine bill, press 1. If you oppose the $40 billion for Ukraine, press 2. If you're unsure, press 3. Right now, as we're talking, a lot of that money, a lot of those weapons are being operationalized, put in motion, and I'd love to share with my colleagues what Northwest Floridians think about it. Yes, to support the $40 billion in Ukraine. No, to oppose it. And while we're taking that from @TreeHuggers for Trump on Getter, don't let Biden buy Russian oil from Venezuela. I think it's pretty ridiculous that we're out there acting like the sanctions against Russia on oil are somehow this great act of virtue, when then we turn around and relieve sanctions on Venezuelan oil and Iranian oil. I mean, Russian oil is stained with blood, so is oil from Venezuela, so is oil from Iran. And you look at this inflation that we see at the gas pump, at the grocery store, when we go out to eat, when we buy an article of clothing, a lot of that is traced back to energy costs. And when you have government screwing with energy costs, it really, really hurts people on the low end of the income scale the most, who cannot just go out and bill another hour when it costs so much more to fill up with gas. Now, it's costing people twice as much as it did under Trump, and that's totally an extra tax on the American family. Okay, let's go to the poll on Ukraine. Wow, 9%. So gun control gets more support than the $40 billion for Ukraine. 9% of you support the $40 billion for Ukraine. 84% oppose, 7% unsure. Just amazing to me. Not surprising, but amazing that there's so much bipartisanship in Congress to ship your money to a foreign government, to borrow money from China to send it to Ukraine. That is not something that makes the United States of America stronger. It makes our country weaker. And the debt that we accumulate, the printing of money and Fed policy, it drives the structural elements of the economy that lead to lasting inflation cycles and lasting recession cycles. Got to get to the important issue of election integrity. Usually we handle that very early, but Bill from Pensacola, you had a point you wanted to make on election integrity. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Well, we covered a lot of stuff, and everything's going to hell in a handbasket, okay? But the most important thing that we can do to stop it all has to be vote them out. And I've seen the 2000 mules, and I've read the papers and watched television, and apparently the election was stolen.
I believe it was.
The problem is, why would, I'm sorry, pardon what you said?
I believe the election was stolen in a variety of ways.
Oh, of course it was. Anybody with an average IQ could figure that out. Now, the next thing is, since we know everything has happened, apparently the Republicans have really delved into this thing, and they know how they did it. They know the methods. What are we doing now? How are we going to stop it?
We're not doing enough, in my opinion, frankly. And I'm proud of what we've done in Florida, because a lot of people don't remember this, but they tried to steal it in 2018 in Florida. They tried to wait for all of us to get done voting in every other part of the state and then will ballots into existence in Broward County. And you had that lady down there, Brenda Snipes, who was bringing in, truckloads of who knows what in the middle of the night. And I went down there myself because I didn't want to see, Northwest Florida's vote diluted by a bunch of illegal ballots, and they drew guns on me in 2018, before 2020. And so when DeSantis got elected, he dealt with this first week. In his first week, he fired the supervisors of elections in Broward County and Palm Beach County, and he put in people who ran clean elections. And then, lo and behold, in Florida, we had integrity over the chain of custody of ballots. We knew when the ballots were coming in. We knew how many ballots were outstanding. And we had a winner on election night. Predictable, reliable, trusted. And what I try to do is I try to go to states like Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and tell them, you don't have to live like this. Like, you don't have to let Fulton County ruin the entire state of Georgia. You don't have to let Philadelphia taint every other vote in Pennsylvania. But you have to fire the people. You can't just pass laws. They'll ignore the laws. You saw in 2000 Mules. I mean, for those of you who did not watch 2000 Mules, I strongly recommend it. Because what you're going to see there with your own eyes is criminal activity, and you're going to be able to know that the people doing it know that they are doing it. They know, you can watch their body language and their behavior, and you know they know they're doing something illegal. And these drop boxes contribute to it. So I look, what you don't want is Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden federalizing this thing right now. Because that will take the Stacey Abrams, election fraud ballot laundering model, and it will democratize it over the entire country. So we got to go battle this thing out state by state, and I try to use Florida as a positive example about how to change it. That's my strategy, but I'd be here for any suggestions you have.
No, the thing is, I like a lot of folks knew instinctively that the thing was rigged. But watching that 2000 Mules actually laid out a system where you could see how it was done.
Exactly.
That was eye-opening.
No, well, hey, thank you for raising the issue. And I hear about this in, a lot of the public meetings, a lot of the community engagements we have. People want to know that their vote is secure because they believe their vote is precious. And in many places, people think that their vote has been disrespected. And if you believe something is precious and you give it to someone else and they disrespect it, well, then you're way less likely to ever give it to them again or anyone else. And, it's very ugly what we've seen go on in some places with a systematized ballot laundering scheme. And it's something that I want to certainly continue to discuss and to raise. Jason in Fort Walton Beach, what's your question or comment?
Yeah, I would like to speak of, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Hello? Okay,
yeah.
I want to speak about the metal detector
Please.
bill. Coming from, I've been to schools that had metal detectors. I actually attended schools that had metal detectors. And I say the metal detectors don't work. And the reason why they don't work is you can have a metal-lit school and school lets out. And the problem, the shooting, most of the shootings that happens at schools happens outside of the schools. So, I think to stop school shootings and
is that true?
I think it's more
is that true?
parents have to do.
I think a lot of them happen inside the schools.
I mean, the ones that's televised, they're all over, the big news is, big news stations and stuff like that. But when you go to a lot of these urban areas that have school shootings, they happen outside of the schools.
I see what you're saying. You're saying that maybe some of the death tragedies where you're losing many, many lives might get more attention than when you have a person, 2 people shot outside of school on the way home. I hear you now. All right, so what's your answer? Give me advice. How would you reduce the frequency of these shootings?
I think the answer is, I think we need smaller class sizes and we need more people that's inside of the schools that can check on these students daily, because these students go weeks without someone asking them how was your day at school, and over time it creates things in them to where they plan things, because nobody ever you got parents that work hard just to take care of their kids who don't have a clue what their kids are going through at school.
So you would view investments in mentoring, after-school programs, getting more people connected, you would view those as anti-gun violence strategies, mentoring, that type of stuff.
Yes. Yes, because I mean, they look at the shooters. They're 18, 19 years old. I mean, they don't, you know. And then with social media now, everybody wants attention. So a lot of these things are not hate motivated, but it's going to fall under the hate motivated category when you have social media that you can go back and reference to and just build a case on it. You know what I'm saying? But I think the kids are not getting enough attention. These kids are going through things and no one is paying attention. Like, as parents, we work so hard to provide for our kids and take care of our kids. So sometimes we don't have the time to understand what our kids looking at on computers and what they're going through, how they think, are they being bullied? You know, there's a lot of things that slip through the cracks. And then at school, when you have one teacher per classroom and more students, a lot of things going on in the class that the teacher may not even pick up on. So I think we need more therapists. We need more, like, everybody's going through trauma right now. You know, trauma was the thing was certain people, individuals, but now it seems like the whole country has some sort of trauma. And a lot of those kids' trauma is not being dealt with.
You know what?
You see kids walking around with hoodies on in 70-degree weather. They get 70 degrees and they still walking around with hoodies on. And people thinking it's just a trend or it's a fashion, but they're not really understanding what a hood represents. A hood represents comfort. They feel comfortable. They feel hugged when they have a hoodie on, a sweatshirt on. They feel hugged. They feel
I do.
Like they're in their own shadow.
Well,
yeah, exactly, and that's how they feel. They feel like they're in their own shadow.
No, I'm a big fan of the hoodie, but I think you're making a broader point, which is that sometimes the really hard long-term investments, you might not see that direct connection on the front end, but if you're basically making a long-term investment in a positive connection that's going to raise the floor for a lot of these people that, whether it's like you say, fall through the cracks or take a dark turn. I mean, everyone who's doing this has taken a tragically dark turn. I'll give you the last word. I think it's been very helpful feedback.
Oh, that's it, man. I just think a lot of it is at home. You know, we just let our kids, let the internet raise our kids, and they see things that may control their perspective, and as parents, and we don't understand what they're watching, because they may do go to that left side or that dark side and say, hey, I agree with the dark side. But as parents, it's on us to identify that before it becomes the actual problem.
Incredibly helpful feedback, and I think every listener probably got a whole lot of value out of that, because frankly, we all have people we could touch in terms of being more helpful and more encouraging, and just to have our eyes open to what's going on around us, man. So hey, thank you for the feedback. I appreciate the advice. We got a comment from Facebook from Bam Bam Graham saying, get rid of the machines and go back to hand-counted ballots. Stop being lazy, ! I don't know if that means I'm being lazy or if the machines encourage laziness in elections infrastructure. I will say this, in Florida, we require both. So where there is a machine scan, we require the backup paper ballot that can be reviewed. Here's the problem. Once you have these mail-in ballots separated from the envelope that contains a signature in any state, and that ballot gets into a batch of other ballots, there is no way to go back and undo that. There is no way to re-authenticate. It's why you gotta catch this stuff before it happens or as it's happening. Because when you catch election fraud after the fact, even in the way that 2000 Mules has done, it's very, very difficult to go and tweeze out the polluted ballots from the unpolluted ballots. And what we saw was that no Article 3 courts were willing to do that following the 2020 election, which I think was really a failure on jurisdictional grounds. Let's see. We had another real big, robust discussion about school security, which very timely, given the tragic events in Texas. Dale from Crestview had a comment. Dale, go ahead with your feedback.
Yeah, I'm a retired veteran. Is there any way school systems have non-paid volunteers, to vet some of us veterans who want to protect kids?
I think that there was legislation that was considered to create a Sentinel program where if you've got the right training, if you've got the right background, you're able to help with school protection. And I think that passed. I think that became law, the Sentinels, where school districts can do that. if you're interested, tell you what, reach out to our congressional office, and we may try to connect you with a school district that could use services like that. Because if there's any place in the world where veterans could contribute to better school security, it's got to be Northwest Florida. Am I right?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
If not school security, how about taking volunteers with veterans to go secure the border?
A border or a school? Give you the means and you're ready to protect it. Hey, that's an America First perspective if I ever heard one. Thank you for your feedback, Dale.
All right.
We are at the end of our hour. Thank you everyone so much for participating. If you weren't able to have your question answered, and I see there are dozens in the queue that we weren't able to get to, we'll do our very best next time. Go to gaetz.house.gov. You could sign up for our newsletter. You could check out our podcast, Firebrand, where I give regular video and audio reports about what's going on in Washington, D.C. You can also get in contact with our office regarding constituent service issues. If there's a way we can help you with a veterans claim, with an IRS claim, with a Social Security claim, we've got teams on standby ready to help. Best way to connect, gaetz.house.gov. We appreciate everyone so much. It is the honor of my life to serve as your congressman, and I look forward to being in touch soon.